Calling Dr. Death from 1943 was an entertaining murder mystery movie featuring Lon Chaney Jr. as a doctor who isn't sure if, in a hypnotic state, he may have murdered his beautiful but unfaithful wife. Now, all the while, his supportive nurse is trying to help him out using the power of hypnotism. Now, this was the first of Universal's Inner Sanctum films. More on that at the end of the video. And while technically not a Universal monster film, it's still an excellent psychological thriller, and I really enjoyed this one. I'll summarize the film, spoiler-free, and then offer some closing thoughts. Well, the film opens up with a disembodied head of actor David Hoffman in a crystal ball. He is the spirit of the Inner Sanctum, and he's telling us about how all of us, yes, even you, can commit murder. And then we cue the credits, and then we open up with Lon Chaney Jr. Now, he is a neurologist named Dr. Mark Steele, and he is doing a hypnotism session to help a young woman. Now, he uses this technique to enter into their subconscious and helps them resolve their personal issues. Now, working with him is his faithful secretary, Stella, who's played by lovely actress Patricia Morrison. By the way, I love how he wakes up his patients. I mean, couldn't you use some other method other than a slap to the face, like smelling salts or something? But in any case, after helping his patients, he's alone, and we hear his thoughts kind of whispering in his head about the fondness for what he does. And there's lots and lots of this whispering throughout the film. Now, he's not happy with his marriage, but he does think very highly of his nurse, Stella, who has been faithful and true with assisting his practice.
Good night, Doctor. See you in the morning.
Her grip is so firm, her hand so cool, as if she wanted to tell me something. Thank you, Stella.
Well, the doctor heads home to a lonely dinner by himself, continuing with his voiceover. And while there, he looks at the painting of his wife that stares at him. Well, he stays awake late, waiting for her to return. He's reading his book while wearing his comfy circle jammies when his wife, Maria, finally arrives home. Well, she's played here by lovely actress Ramsey Ames. And boy, he really surrounds himself with some gorgeous women, doesn't he? Well, anyhow, Ramsey Ames, it's noteworthy, was also with Lon Chaney Jr. in the film The Mummy's Ghost in 1944. Well, they argue when he tells her that they just can't go on and they should separate, but she's not having it. She likes the money and the prestige that comes from being married to a doctor, even though we saw her get dropped off by another guy who seems to be fond of her. So is the doctor thinking murderous thoughts? Well, we're left hanging at this point. But the next day he's back at work, and he almost opens up to Stella about his feelings for her, as he mentions the fight with his wife from the previous night. At home later, Dr. Steele discovers his wife is gone for the weekend. So he leaves, and he goes for one of those great movie drives with a rapidly changing rear projection screen video. Well, he blacks out, but then wakes up later at his desk, and we're not really sure what has happened or honestly how much time has passed. Stella wakes him up, tells him that he had some sort of a mental blackout. Well, he pleads with her for help, and watching this, I can't help but think, man, his breath was probably really nasty at this point. He's blacked out, probably has breath like an old mummy or something, but we hear more of his internal monologue as he's puzzled over what has happened. He gets cleaned up, but soon, the police arrive, and they tell him that his wife was found murdered. Now, he's shocked at this news, and he heads with them to the cabin where she was killed. And it's a great camera point of view as the doctor makes his way inside. Now, it's here that we first meet with Inspector Greg. He's played by actor J. Carrol Naish. He's an excellent actor I've seen in other films before, like Sahara with Bogart. Well, he's really great here as the detective in this film. And his character never gives an inch, but just seems convinced that this doctor is guilty. Well, Dr. Steele, he sees his wife's body, which was apparently bludgeoned and then disfigured with acid. Now, in his voiceover, he's shocked and troubled. What's going on? But then looking down, he sees one of the buttons from his jacket laying on the ground. What? Well, back at his office, he confides to Stella he just doesn't know what's going on. And she faithfully believes in him and in his innocence. Well, he gets a call, and they've arrested a suspect for the murder. So the doctor goes to the station to meet with the accused. It's a character, Robert Duvall. This is the guy that his wife had been having the affair with, and he's played here by actor David Bruce of the Mad Ghoul fame. Well, Duvall pleads for his innocence, and the doctor says that he believes him, but that inspector still seems convinced that Dr. Steele is guilty. Well, Duvall's wife comes to plead with the doctor. She's played here by Faye Helm, who was actually also in the Wolfman movie from 41. Well, she believes that her husband is innocent. She confesses that they have been having marital problems. She knew of his unfaithfulness, but that her husband would never commit murder. The trial of Duvall takes place with more voiceover from the doctor and this cool overlay of his face, too. So at this point, it seems like Dr. Steele, he's starting to lose it. He's hearing voices in his head, and he starts to panic, and he goes for a drink. And it's at this point the inspector arrives, and he's still playing hardball here. What's the matter, doctor? Nerves or conscience? This guy, he doesn't give an inch. He knows that an innocent man is about to die, and he's pushing this doctor to confess. He knows that his conscience is bothering him. Well, the doctor decides he's going to undergo some self-hypnosis. So Nurse Stella gets him all set up and actually records a session with this cool vinyl record that allowed you to record sound. It's pretty cool. Back in the 40s, they had this awesome technology. But it's around here, as he's getting hypnotized, that the inspector returns. And he talks to Stella, telling her that he's convinced this doctor is guilty. But Stella plays back the recording that has just been made. And we hear the doctor's own voice, basically giving the story, proving his innocence. But this inspector, he's not convinced. He thinks the doctor can control his own subconscious, and he just leaves. Well, Dr. Steele goes to talk to Duvall again. He's behind bars, and he's desperate to get more information from him. And we find out that there really wasn't much love in the affair that he was having. He was basically just using the doctor's wife to pay off his own gambling debts. And then the lights flicker overhead. Oh, we know what that means. So back at his office, Dr. Steele is reading in the paper, and he sees Stella collapse from overwork. So he suggests that she hire more help, and then drives her to go see her family at their home in Malcolm Falls for the weekend. But when he returns to the office on Monday, it looks like there's been some kind of fire in his office. And as you can guess, that inspector promptly arrives again, and he is suspicious, as the acid that was used to create the fire in his office was apparently similar to that which was used to disfigure his murdered wife's face. So the inspector, he's putting the pieces together, and he remains curious if a call might have been made that maybe vibrated from the phone and made the acid fall. And of course, the doctor and Stella plead innocence to all of this. Well, as we near the end of the film, we are at the eve of Duvall's execution. So Dr. Steele and Stella, they're spending some time together to try to take their mind off of things. They go out for drinks and they go to the theater, but it doesn't help. And soon, the time draws near. So what will happen? Will Duvall be executed? Is he guilty? Or has Dr. Steele somehow committed the crime and managed to wipe it from his subconscious? Well, there's a great twist ending that you have to see for yourself. So no spoilers, go check out the movie and see the ending for yourself. But let me wrap up here with some closing thoughts. Calling Dr. Death was released in 1943. It was produced by Universal and directed by Reginald Leborg. I did a little research here because I wanted to understand better what this Inner Sanctum intro was all about. With actor David Hoffman's head in the crystal ball. So here's a little history. Inner Sanctum Mysteries were originally an old-time radio program that aired in January 7th, 1941 to October 5th, 1952, with 526 episodes that were broadcast. And there are a number of these old recordings on the Internet Archive, and I've been listening to a few. They're actually really enjoyable. Some notable stars that appeared on that program included Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Mary Astor, Peter Lorre, Claude Rains, Orson Welles, and it's fascinating to me just to hear some of these. And, to step back in time and think of that age when radio programs were the popular entertainment for families.
Inner Sanctum Mysteries, brought to you right through the summer by Bromo Seltzer. Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum. This is your host to welcome you through the squeaking door.
It's really neat stuff. Well, in June of 43, Universal bought the screen rights to the series from Simon & Schuster, and there were several films that were made in this series. With the exception of Pillow of Death, each one of these films opens up with that bobbing head and the crystal ball, basically telling the audience how we are all capable of murder. Well, not me, because I'm just an easygoing fellow who watches and reviews films from 80 years ago on YouTube, but who knows? Anyhow, the films in the series include Calling Dr. Death, Weird Woman, Dead Man's Eyes, The Frozen Ghost, Strange Confession, and Pillow of Death. And these came out roughly 1943 to 1945. Now, I would actually love to watch and review all of these, but I've read it can be a little bit weird if you watch them all at once, because they all feature Lon Chaney Jr., but in different roles doing different things for different stories. So viewed all together could be a little bit confusing, I guess. Now, in thinking about it, these films could technically be considered part of the classic Universal Monster lineup. I mean, if you think about it, they came out around the same time frame, early 40s. You know, it's kind of the time frame of that classic monster era. They include eerie topics and themes. They all involve Lon Chaney Jr., who was an essential actor in many of those monster classics. And I don't know, they kind of have a look and feel like they belong in the Universal Monster universe. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. My impression of this Inner Sanctum episode is that it almost felt more like a crime drama, or maybe even like watching an old Twilight Zone episode. The suspense and the mystery were fantastic, and the amnesia element reminded me of other films like Hitchcock's Spellbound with Gregory Peck, or even Man in the Dark with Edmund O'Brien. I know the amnesia device can feel a little gimmicky at times, but it works well here, and it really has you questioning what's going on, particularly the weird elements of hypnotism and exploring the subconscious and all that sort of stuff. I thought that Lon Chaney Jr. was great in this film as this brooding, conflicted doctor. You know, no mummy or werewolf makeup. He's just a normal guy puzzling over the mystery of the murder of his unfaithful wife. I found that I really believed in his character because, let's be honest, he doesn't really have the Hollywood glamour to him. You know, he's just a little doughy and older, and I can relate to that personally. And honestly, I love this story because it really kept you fascinated all the way up to that surprise twist ending. You know, I never felt completely comfortable with the doctor as being innocent or guilty, but instead, I just wanted to know what was going on, and I wanted to see this mystery solved, and they really played this very well. It never felt too strongly one way or the other. You weren't led to think, oh yeah, he's guilty, or no, he's completely innocent. You never really knew. There was just an excellent balance there, especially because you had the suspicion of the investigator on the one side, but then the faith of the nurse on the other. So which one was it? Is he guilty or not? You don't really know until the final reveal, and that's what made this one so good. J. Carrol Naish was excellent as the driven detective who seems completely certain from the first moment that he sees this doctor that he's guilty, and he just doesn't let up at all. You know, sometimes you watch the old detective films and maybe the detective kind of warms up to the suspect, but nope, does not happen here. You know, at one point he commends Dr. Steele as being, you know, something of a challenge to him to try to figure out. And really liked that type of character. Detectives like this are a lot of fun in these old movies. And you'll have to see the end of the film to know if his suspicion is validated. And Patricia Morrison and Ramsey Ames were both excellent in their respective roles as both the cheating wife and the faithful nurse. You have to hand it to Lon Chaney Jr. He picked a role with some really gorgeous supporting actresses. And I wonder if he jumped in this role because of that, and also because he didn't have to wear any uncomfortable makeup this time. It's so different just to see him as just a normal guy. In any case, I really enjoyed this one. It was some great acting and it's a clever story. I thought the production was well done with that eerie background music, you know, Lon Chaney's voiceover throughout the film, and even occasional weird angles of the camera to build the suspense. Calling Dr. Death It was an excellent first chapter of the Inner Sanctum films for Universal. It's just a great murder mystery, keeps you guessing to the very end, and it's a film worth checking out.